Hello and good morning, this is Chris G4NAB. I'd like to give you a brief run through SvxLink as it exists in the UK wide and Yorkshire reflectors. Firstly, for the most part, we are using either version 24 or version 25 of the SvxLink software from Tobias SM0SVX, without whom this program would have no meaning. In some parts of the network, we are using a version added to by AD DL1HRC with USRP logic that affords us the opportunity to connect to other networks and systems. Let's look at a repeater node first. MB5NT is a repeater that's located in the district of Wallsend, part of Newcastle, in North Tyneside. This dashboard is publicly viewable as mb7ht.co.uk and presents all the information required for a user of the repeater.
Talk group 53573.
Sorry about that. We'll turn that off just for the moment. We'll get to that in a while. Its frequencies are shown at qrz.com along with some other relevant information. It is a full duplex Tate 800 Mark I series repeater, but it's controlled with SvX repeater logic at its heart and an available connection to Echolink. At the top of the dashboard, of course, is its title and the SvxReflector to which it is connected. This is a public view, so only the blue menu items are available. On the left is a live stream button that permits a listener to receive any active transmissions, with perhaps a short delay. If there's silence, then you might have to look at the column of information below to see if there is an active talk group indicator. In this column is all the information pertinent to the repeater status, the active logics, the modules loaded, the talk group information, the repeater status and its current connection to the SvxReflector. The Echolink users box will only display the number of connections, not the call sign of users. In the main part of the page is the current daily activity, and this may be reset as the log is rotated overnight. Below the main page are a number of buttons that when clicked force a dynamic connection to the talk group displayed on it. The yellow buttons are unused. The green buttons are talk groups within SvxLink. The blue buttons are talk groups to all Starlink nodes in the UK. The maroon buttons connect to one of the two French SvxLink networks. And the orange buttons are talk groups to all Starlink nodes in the USA. The red button forces a disconnect, so please don't touch this button to interfere with communication, or we will send the boys round. I'm joking, of course. Now then, for the system operator, he needs access to the red items in the menu. So he has to click on Authorize, naturally. So he can sign in using his previously selected username and password. And on the bottom of that column on the left, you'll see that the editing has now been changed to authorized. So this gives you now access to the SvxLink talk groups, buttons, a mixer, Echolink, meta information, and node information buttons. And of course the log. SvxLink provides access to the running configuration. Please excuse, I've got a frog in the throat and a bit of lurgy. All these aspects here can be adjusted and applied immediately by a button at the bottom. which restarts the SVX link. Very useful. Talk groups. This repeater has a number of talk groups which have been selected, to which to listen if they are activated. The talk groups provide space up to 6 talk groups so that the repeater can listen, either activated from inside the network or from the local repeater. Naturally, it's a first come, first served, but talk groups can be prioritized by adding a plus or 2 pluses after the talk group number to override if there is an active talk group. So, for example, there might be a conversation going on talk group 23561, but somebody will activate 235 plus from somewhere else, and that will force the connection. But this is down to the sysop and should be judged on his say-so, not mine. We go to buttons. The button configurator allows you to edit and change the color of any of the buttons that are on the bottom of the main page. And the changes take place immediately on clicking Save at the bottom. A mixer. Now this should be tempered with running sudo alsa mixer in the terminal as a preference, as different sound cards introduce parameters that are different to the original model, which I have discovered. Now, Echolink contains the parameters for the Echolink server. Sysops should run this with mute logic linking equals 1 to prevent Echolink from interrupting a network communication in progress. It also avoids embarrassment. If Echolink was not set up on initialization of the repeater, then it can be added to by setting this page first and then going to the SvxLink configurator, down to repeater logic, and add module Echolink in the list of modules. Now then, meta information. This will depend on what language you've installed on your node or repeater. If it's EN_GB for the UK, then there will be a list of airports that were displayed on the initialization. So all the major airports in the UK, such as Heathrow, Echo Golf Lima Lima, have a sound sample which says London Heathrow. If you installed EN_US and you use the IAOC code Kilo India Alpha Hotel, then it will report Washington Dulles. However, if you use an airport code that is for which there is no sample, then it will simply spell back the IAOC code, like Echo Golf X-ray X-ray, and will only repeat back weather if that call sign has been registered with the International Weather Database. So, again, if it hasn't been installed in the first instance, you simply go back to SvxLink, having configured this page, and insert module meta info in the list of modules in the SvxLink in the repeater logic. Same applies if you're using simplex logic. Power has some obvious connotations. the sysop can restart the service. We could reboot the whole SVX link computer, Raspberry or otherwise, or it can be used to power off. However, if the repeater is in a remote location and you haven't previously set up a reboot facility, then don't push the power off, because it will shut it down and you will not have a method by which you can restart it without going to site to turn it back on. Okay, so that basically is the dashboard. I've shown you the nodes, the talk groups. Well, that's the repeater dashboard. Let's go to the SvxReflector web manager. And here it is. This is one of the two SvxReflectors that we have, the other one being the YorkshireNet. Each line represents a node or a bridge or a talk group. Those with proper call signs are the nodes. Those that are simply phrases or words are the bridges to the various networks to which we can connect as talk groups. Let's just pick on one, which is a very popular network, and this is the Northwest All-Star Group, NWAG. This is our talk group 53573. Currently not active, but if it was active, it will be outlined in blue. But if I just scroll back up again, there's a couple of active talk groups there. One is Chicago 312, and the other one is East Coast. They are both links to other networks, but they're not permanently connected to any repeater unless the repeater keeper wants it. That's the difference between us and the All-Star link nodes. We have the choice, and it's the choice of the repeater keeper to connect to whichever node he wishes. East Coast Reflector is most of the eastern seaboard of the US. However, there are a large number of stations right the way across the US that connect to it, and it tends to get very, very busy indeed. And it's probably active at the moment for the morning brewnet. But if we go back down the list here and we select MB5NT, it is currently monitoring talk groups 235, 2350, 23450, 23561, 43136 and 47920. The last two being All-Star link nodes, but we've used them as talk group numbers. 47920 is in fact the online amateur radio club. And if we look down there, OARC monitoring talk group 47972 in the list. I've scrolled back to the top because we can see that there are a number of stations which are being active from moment to moment, and we can look at the node information by clicking on the button, and this brings up each of those connections, giving a little bit more detail, sometimes where they are, sometimes where they are connected, and the version of SVX link software they're using, and whether or not they're talking. If they're talking is true, then they are outlined in blue. If they're talking is false, then they're not talking, and there is no distinguishing between the nodes that are silent. And we can click back on the dashboard to go back to there. Now we have people ask, what are the talk groups? Well, there's the general list of talk groups that are currently available, but that's not a definitive list. Many more talk groups can be used. Even talk groups that do not exist, you can actually call them by DTMF and have a conversation with somebody on the same talk group. We've also got a map view, and this only works if the stations have filled in their node info JSON file. As you can see, not everybody has. And you can see there's actually a node talking with a little red flashing dot in Sweden. He's talking there. And this is, he's actually listening. Oh, I see. Anglo-Scottish node has got the wrong coordinates. So we'll sort that out in a minute. That's supposed to be over there. But this one here is SM5GXQ, good friend Peter. And we'll go back over here. And we've got G4 MSF in Gateshead. And we've got a GB3BD or repeater in Banbury. Now we can go back to the dashboard. The most important thing for users is the ability to download the image of SvxLink, which is available here. Thank you, phone. Together with some instructions and a help sheet. The help sheet is merely an indication on how you use the DTMF keypad on a radio to access your repeater. Let's go back to the dashboard. As an administrator, I can access the admin panels for the system, naturally. Otherwise it wouldn't function. Oops, sorry about that. Let me just make some adjustments. Now, a very good friend of mine, Alan, has just asked for his password for a repeater. And so I can go down in my list of previous connections, find his password and send it to him. I'm scrolling fast so you don't have a clue. Alright. There are too many passwords there and probably you can't read them anyway. With this page, using the button on the right hand side, I can deactivate any station that may be causing interference, both intentionally or unintentionally, and bar him from the network until the problem is alleviated. So we'll go back to the next part of the thing, is where we can add a new call sign. And by adding a call sign, it will generate a random password, which I shall then copy, paste and send to the intended syshop. I can also remove call signs. For example, if someone says I don't want to play anymore, I can enter the call sign and remove it from the SvxReflector configuration. And I can simply log out and go back to the node monitor. But at every stage I make a change, then the SvxReflector is started. There's a momentary disruption, but it is minimal, and everybody comes back connected to whichever conversation they were connected to in the first place. But so the important piece is if you are going to have a node, please complete the node info JSON in order that we can see more or less where you are. You don't have to put the exact location. I'm not fussy, but it's nice to see where you are and that we can do stuff. Anyway, that has been a brief overview of how a repeater will interact with the SvxReflector. I'd like to give you more information about how we use it, but it really is as you need to know. We have nodes connected to Starlink, we have nodes connected to DMR, and various other modes. I've just had a conversation with somebody on the M17 mode via the Yorkshire Net talk group. I don't know how that was made, but it worked and was quite an interesting experiment. from their point of view. So thank you for the Warrington Amateur Radio Society. However, that draws this little episode to a close. Number 73. Bye for now.